Hello, and welcome to Thrive Together, a mental wellness series across diverse journeys. Today's topic is thriving entrepreneurship, cultivating well-being in business. And I'm your speaker, Megan Hunter. This broadcast was originally brought to the world on Tuesday, February 6th at 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Quebec time. This series is brought to you by Yes Employment and Entrepreneurship. And we thank our sponsors, the CHSSN and the Public Health Agency of Canada. Without their support and funding, this series would not have been possible. We hope that this series continues to bring enrichment, energy, and really focus to mental well-being and its importance across the different journeys that you have, whether it be finding a job, running your own business, being an artist, or being a newcomer to Canada. Before we dive into the content formally, we would like to acknowledge that we are coming to you from the traditional territories of the Kainai and the Atokahi, or Montreal, as the place that has long served as a site of meeting and exchange among First Nations. We recognize and respect that these traditional custodians of the land have been here long before the settlements that we are aware of today. They continue to be a place of cultural exchange, gathering, and stewardship of Indigenous communities and for Indigenous communities. In the spirit of reconciliation, we recognize that there's much learning to be done, a lot of unlearning to be done, and so many stories to share to bring us up to speed in the history that Canada has not been aware of in most recent centuries. And I would like to tell you that I'm coming to you today from Treaty 7 territory, which is in southern Alberta. So before we go on, I like to do a group agreement. I know this is a recording, but when we were all together, it's really important to think of this experience of learning as a place where you can care for yourself. So we do a group agreement for psychological safety. And some of you might be wondering, what is psychological safety? Well, friends, you're going to learn a little bit about it today, but I also have put a few resources in the resource pamphlet brochure and also throughout this session. So definitely check that out if it's something that is new to you. It's crucial for the workplace, especially as an entrepreneur. The first agreement is that we take care of ourselves. So use this time to care for you. Maybe it's the time that you finally get to stretch or go for a walk. Make sure that you have your snack or have some water. Maybe it's a time where you can just get cozy and listen and allow yourself to absorb some information. When we were together, we encouraged group level disclosure, meaning anything that we want to share, or if you're sharing on a public forum, perhaps a comment section for this video, make sure that when we're sharing something to a group, we ask ourselves the question, how is this helpful to the whole? This session was not designed to be one-on-one, it was designed to be group level learning. And with that, we respect that the experience of others is theirs and true to them, just like the experience for us is true to us. And to really extend that respectful lens and respectful attitude and behavior to all, including yourself, in both the virtual world and the physical world, which I think is important to say because we're in a place now where we are no longer separate from our digital fingerprints. So we are here today to recognize the specific struggles of being an entrepreneur in Quebec in a COVID-19 era and discover ways to recover so that you can thrive. And I hope that's what you were signing up for, because that's what we're doing. And how we're going to do this is this wonderful agenda we have today. We're going to talk about what is mental well-being and what does that mean for our business. We'll do a couple of introductions. I'll tell you a bit about myself. I'll welcome you to the space. We'll talk about what it's like to be an entrepreneur in Quebec and talk about mental well-being for entrepreneurs. What is it? What are the barriers that you face? And then how do we cultivate well-being? How do we help ourselves out of burnout, understand the order of care that's our responsibility, the role of rest, and our thoughts and feelings in that process. And of course, how we can keep this journey going. Remember, this is a beginning of a journey, or maybe in the middle of your journey, a place to pick up some information, some questions, some resources to help you to continue your growth and development in this area. Our mental well-being, just like our physical well-being, is a lifelong commitment to ourselves that helps us out along the way. So my name is Megan Hunter. And when we were together, I asked you to tell me a little bit about you in the chat, because I wanted to tell you a little bit about myself. So I really do like to match. As you can see, that is me doing a handstand at the top of Kicking Horse Mountain in British Columbia, in Golden, BC. And the Jeep matched me. And at the time, I had just started my consulting company, Peak and Prairie Health Promotion. And the Jeep was the same color as my outfit. And I got very, very excited about it. So this was a nod to my branding, I suppose, as to why it's there. It probably tells you a lot about me. I love the outdoors. I'm a snowboarder. I also used to be a gymnast, and I did cheerlead in the CFL. Who knew? Now, those were more of my younger years. These days, I find myself working in the health promotion space, and mainly in mental health promotion. I have a background as a registered kinesiologist, so I take physical well-being very seriously. I also have an education degree from California, where I taught for a few years in Northern California before coming back to Canada and doing a lot of work with the public sector, mainly in education space and most recently in municipalities. I'm finishing up the very last bit of a thesis on how COVID-19 impacted, or didn't impact, but most likely impacted, our mental health in the workplace. So that's definitely something to keep your eye out for if you're looking for a read, probably in a year or two when that's publicly available. You might be interested in some of that. Anyhow, however you come to this space today, know that there are so many layers to you. You probably know that already, but I want you to know that they're all welcome in this space, and likely all of those pieces add to your journey as an entrepreneur. So speaking of which, we've been through a lot. When we were together live, we did sort of a venting session of all of the things that happened. We used this as a whiteboard. Some of what came up was things like COVID-19 affected our cash flow, how we covered expenses, how we generated revenue, how we got paid. There was the physical stress of being limited in how we move, how we do things throughout the day, lockdowns, fear of a recession, fear of failure, so many expectations. And then, of course, we layer upon that, if you're a woman, if you're a racialized minority or a visible minority, if you were a newcomer to Canada, there were certain types of businesses that were affected more than others. Retail, tourism, restaurants. There was just so much happening. And we really didn't know how to talk about mental health. I think COVID-19 has helped us explore the concept of it, but there's still so much to learn. We're now recognizing we all have mental health. It's not just someone who has a mental illness, but all of us. If you have a brain, you have mental health. But I think we're really discovering, how do we talk about that? How do we bring it to life for ourselves? And I guess more importantly, what do we do with that information? Once we start talking about our mental health, how do we support our mental health in meaningful ways, especially as an entrepreneur, where you're a problem solver, probably a high achiever, you're adaptable, you're resilient. And sometimes it's hard to ask for help, even when we know we need to. So I'd like you to reflect for a moment. What does it mean to be an entrepreneur in Quebec? I invite you to pause the recording, take a moment to write this down or think about it, or talk to a friend about it, go for a walk about it, and then come back to the recording. If you'd like to do this after, that's fine as well. Write the question down and definitely give yourself some time to reflect. So welcome back. Hopefully you've taken a moment to reflect on your own experience as an entrepreneur, an English-speaking entrepreneur in Quebec, let's say. And you're probably thinking, what is mental well-being in general, and what does it actually have to do with me? I tend to find that having a definition can help us answer those questions. So I went to actually one of our sponsors, the Public Health Agency of Canada, and they define mental health, which is also mental well-being, not that they're necessarily interchangeable, but mental health is the term that we use to describe the health of our brain and hormones and the emotions and feelings that come with being human. So, how the Public Health Agency of Canada describes it is the capacity of each of us and all of us to think, to feel, to act in ways that enhance our ability to enjoy life and deal with the challenges we face. It's a positive sense of emotional and spiritual well being that respects the importance of culture, equity, social justice, interconnections, and personal dignity. Whew, let's unpack that for a second. There's a lot there. We're talking about how we perceive the world, feel, think, and act so that we can enjoy life. Some of us might be thinking, wow, that's been a while since I've really enjoyed life. There's a lot going on. Or maybe you're someone who really has that down pat. You think, you feel, you act in ways that help you to enjoy the day to day and the little moments and the big moments. Recognizing that our resilience, so our ability to deal with challenges in a positive sense of emotional and spiritual well being, I think we can easily connect that to something of the past, like suck it up, buttercup, or just pull up your bootstraps and do it. The research of resilience is teaching us more and more that it's actually the softness, the rest, the recovery, the kindness that we give to ourselves that actually helps us recover from a challenge, so that we don't look back on that challenge and think about just how it broke us. We look at the challenge and think about how we invested in ourselves and others to heal. And it's that healing that makes us stronger, like a scar tissue. When a scar heals, it is a strong set of skin. And that strong set of skin is there to protect us. But it also reminds us of what has happened. I also love that in the definition of mental health, we're looking at culture, equity, social justice, our interconnections, and personal dignity. Our mental health is so much more than just ourselves. It's how we interact with others, the world, and how we see others in the world, and even some of the injustices that are happening. And there's a lot going on right now. It's okay if the world feels heavy. It's okay if you feel sad and angry some days and frustrated. There's a lot to be sad, angry, and frustrated about. And all of our emotions need to be welcome. It's how we manage those emotions that matter. All right. I hope that was helpful. Something that's related to mental health that comes up quite a bit is burnout. Now, there are a number of resources I have linked for you in the brochure and also throughout this presentation. But burnout is just defined as a state of emotional, mental, and often physical exhaustion that's brought on by prolonged or repeated stress. It's mostly caused by problems at work, but it can appear in other areas of life, such as parenting, caretaking, or romantic relationships. Women tend to be most susceptible to burnout due to the double duty, triple shift, work after work that tends to happen, especially if you're an entrepreneur. There's quite a bit that is involved with that. As I said that definition, I wonder if some of you were cringing and thinking, oh, that's definitely me, or I've felt that before, or I'm feeling this right now. I want you to know that burnout is not an if question, it's a when question, especially in entrepreneurship. You care deeply about the work that you do. You care deeply about your company, your family, your friends, the people around you. And when we care that much, compassion fatigue can come into play as well. But when we're thinking about burnout, we likely are all going to burn out at some point in our time in life. And it's in a way part of the process. So really the question is, what do we do about burnout? Not how to fear burnout or prevent burnout. I mean, preventing burnout is nice, and we can do things in our everyday, day-to-day to support preventing burnout. But burning out does not mean that you've done something wrong. In fact, it means that you're really doing your very best and putting all of the available energy you have into something you care about. The important thing is that you know how to recognize it and how to step back and heal. Okay, but Megan, how do I recognize it? Well, Okay, here we go. There are a lot of causes of burnout. um, there's also signs of burnout. So I want you to take a look at this list. And this might be another place where you pause the recording and just take some reflection time. You might be experiencing burnout, or likely are, if you have any more than two of the following: cynicism, feeling mental exhaustion, a sense of dread, anger, irritability, ineffectiveness, appetite changes, sleep pattern changes. I hope I didn't just strike fear into the hearts of many, because I read this list and I'm like, oh yeah, I got some of that going on right now. And again, the important part is not getting mad at yourself for being cynical or feeling angry or realizing that you have mental exhaustion. It's stepping back and noticing, ah, that is a sign of burnout. Burnout is a sign that I have used as much available energy as I have for this one thing, or many things, let's be honest. And it's time for me to turn inward and do a little bit of care for myself so I can heal. And we can do that amidst all the many things we have going on in our life. We don't have to go on a month vacation, although that would be nice. Um, Sometimes it just takes an hour to ourselves, or 5 minutes to ourselves, or just an extra focus on packing a lunch that we like. Not that I'm trying to simplify the recovery, but it doesn't have to be a big task to heal. It's little habits over time that help us heal. So you might be asking, we've we've kind of gone through down that dark path where we've talked about how hard it is to be an entrepreneur, how hard it is to be an entrepreneur in Quebec as an Anglophone, that burnout is possible. What else are you going to tell us, Megan? Well, I think it's important, if you've been in any of my other recordings or sessions, it's important to name the beast, the challenge. We need to see the challenge clearly in order to address the challenge. That's also part of being mentally healthy and supporting ourselves to be mentally healthy. We are mentally healthy when we can realize we have the ability to cope with stress. We can work productively to contribute to what we do, and how we like to show up in the world. This photo I put up, and I kind of cried, laughed as I put it up, because I was a new mom and a new entrepreneur during COVID. I incorporated my business in 2020 in January, and I became a new mom in May of 2021. So I was a new entrepreneur, pregnant, and a new mother during COVID. And this picture makes my skin cry, my blood cry, really. It hurts to look at, to think that this is the reality of so many of us. And you may not be a mother, you may not be a woman as you watch this, but I know that each person who is an entrepreneur has a life outside of their business. They want to keep the roof over their head, feed their family, heck, save up for something nice like a vacation, or get the new car that you're after, or even just upgrade your laptop so things are easier for you. There's a lot. There's a lot on our plates. What has helped me in supporting my mental health is actually a lesson that I learned from a professor at the School of Public Health at the University of Alberta. And his name is Dr. Louis Francis Cuddy. He says we have an order of care. And you'll see in this podium here that we have you at the highest podium. We have our family and friends, or our people, I like to say, our inner circle, and then our business on the lowest rank. And it's really in that order. Dr. Lou is an emergency room doctor. He used to be the head of the Canadian Medical Association. He's spent a lot of his career supporting really important health issues in our society, like texting and driving. He was one of the first people to recognize the dangers and do some health promotion there. And he has contributed so much to solving houselessness in Edmonton, Alberta, and also to the opioid crisis here as well. He is a man who literally saves lives. And he told us that our order of care must be ourselves first every single time. We need sleep, rest, water, food, movement, social health, faith, or some sort of a connection to universe, other people. We need to take care of ourselves in order to be there for our family and friends. And when our family and friends are thriving and we know that, we're connected to them, our business or our work will thrive too. And I remember putting up my hand being like, Dr. Lou, it's all a priority. So how do I put in order the things that keep me and my family well? Why am I not putting my business first? And, the more we dug into this concept, the more I realized that he was right, because our business is us. We are our business. Our mental health is our business. If we are off, if we are not thinking well, making good decisions, having a clear mind because we're not prioritizing sleep, nutrition, moving, connecting, enjoying life, our business is not going to be as successful as it could be. And then the cycle continues. So instead of looking at it as a chicken and an egg, look at it as you have a place to start. And your place to start is with yourself. The good news is it's also the place we have the most control. In the live session, we went out into a breakout room to talk about this. There were some really good conversations, very lively conversations about how this could work, could not work, what the challenges are. And they're all welcome here. I encourage you, one, to prove me wrong or to prove Dr. Lou wrong, that you don't put yourself first. See how that goes. And I also challenge you to pause the recording now and really think about this order of care. How can putting yourself first positively impact your relationships and therefore your business? And then the cycle continues. Your business will help you to help your family and friends, to help your business, et cetera, et cetera. So take a moment to reflect on that. And when you come back, we're going to talk about one of the most important things we can do for our mental health and taking care of ourselves first. We'll see you soon. All right, welcome back. Or if you never left, hi, it's nice that you stayed. We're going to talk about rest. We're going to talk about how amidst all that we do, we need to rest in order to be our best. And rest is so productive. In fact, rest was the difference at that, and some sports psychology, was the difference between Canadian athletes medaling in the Olympics in 2010 and not. Did you know that prior to the 2010 Olympics, if you were in the top 5 of your category as an athlete, in, say, the Winter Olympics as a Canadian athlete, let's pick snowboarding because I like it. Let's say I'm in the top 5 of athletes in the world in my field of snowboarding. Prior to the 2010 Vancouver Olympics, I had a 25% chance of medaling in the Olympics if I was in the top 5. In 2010, as a Canadian athlete, my chances went up to 80%. 80% from 25 of getting a medal at the Olympics. Why? As Canadian athletes, we really doubled down on sports psychology and visualization, but also rest. Our athletes got really good at knowing when to rest and how to rest, and that rest produced results. But you don't have to take my word for it. There's a lot of research out there. If you want to learn more about performance and rest, I encourage you to check out a gentleman named Graham Lowe. He's a Canadian, does some work out of the University of Queens, or Queen's University. He also has some other wonderful stories like that. Ask him to talk to you about pilots and surgeons and the role of rest in their performance and safety records. It's pretty eye-opening. But I'd like to give you a little video to talk about really why rest is important. So I'll let our good friend here at a TEDx take us through some of that, and then we'll come back in about 3 to 5 minutes.
I'd love invite you just to reflect for a minute and ask yourself this question. Can you remember the last time you woke up in the morning, went into your bathroom, looked in the mirror, and thought to yourself, wow, I feel fresh, motivated, inspired, and rested? Chances are, if you're like most people I talk to, that is a rare memory. And rather, they spend most of their lives feeling depleted. I'm here to tell you, we are facing an epidemic, a life-threatening, brain-paralyzing, heart-destroying condition I call the doing disease. The perennial, incessant need to keep doing, keep moving, keep achieving. French philosopher Blaise Pascal said, all of man's problems come from his inability to sit quietly in a room alone. As someone who has suffered extensively from this doing disease, I can tell you I was terrified of being still, of being quiet, and of being alone. I was afraid of not having an agenda or a goal, or of being out of control. The good news is there is a cure. And it's not something that only some of us can have access to, or even something all that new. It's called rest. A seemingly simple concept, and yet I would argue it is radically countercultural, incredibly life-changing, and tremendously performance-enhancing. I've been on a profound personal journey the last few years exploring this idea of rest, and recently completed my master's researching the impact of rest on the performance of leaders. The world is a siren call. The world is calling from you more, more, more. Honestly, even just reading this quote stresses me out. But this quote is one that came from the hundreds of interviews and surveys I did with leaders from a diverse range of industries. 53% of people responded that they do not factor rest into their weekly schedule. The main barriers that they identified was that they feel guilty, they don't know how to, they can't switch off their mind and disconnect from technology, and that they actually are just simply overcommitted in every aspect of their life. 62% of people said that their workplace cultures actually don't value or are negative towards the very notion of rest. So when I talk about rest, people think, well, that's great, you're encouraging me to sleep more, maybe take some more vacations. And don't get me wrong, sleep is terrific, and it's a really important part of this conversation. And who doesn't love a great vacation? But truth is, I think rest is so much more than just this. From an academic perspective, I defined rest as the renewing of one's depleted physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual reserves. It's about deep internal renewal that occurs to our whole self. The physical and mental side, but the emotional and spiritual part of us also. From a personal perspective, I've really come to understand rest as being a space away from doing, from people-pleasing, from competing, from performing, from controlling. It's a space where I have the freedom to choose where I'm going to invest my energy. And I find it to be a starting place, a place I can actually move out of into the world. So you might ask, well, why does any of this matter? And I think we only have to watch a day's worth of news to recognize that our world is crying out for more unifying, more inspiring, more sustainable, and more impactful leadership. And let's be honest, leadership is demanding. It is a hard slog. It's a hard slog that inflicts wounds and injuries and often leads to burnout. And whether you carry a title or not, I think when you're leading well, whether it be as a mum or a dad, a student, a scientist, a teacher, a nurse, a consultant, a coach, a president, a commanding officer, or simply as a friend, when you are leading well, you are giving of yourself, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and mentally. And whenever you're giving of yourself, you need a corresponding season or space to actually refuel and replenish what's being taken out of you. I think we need to stop applauding leaders who are working 18 hours a day and who are burnt out and start promoting and encouraging and affirming a culture of rest. We need to slow down in order to speed up.
And I'll stop us right there at the punchline. We need to slow down to speed up. And you may be wondering, well, Megan, I am not, I mean, I'm an entrepreneur. Maybe I'm not a leader. Maybe you don't see yourself as a leader. But in fact, you are. If you are an entrepreneur, you are leading. You are leading by yourself in some cases. And that can be a lonely world. And it means that you give a lot of yourself and you need space to replenish what you give. Otherwise, we are not really giving, are we? We might just be fizzling out. I've also linked this TED Talk if you are interested in listening to the full piece of it, which I highly recommend. There's some lovely recommendations and skills in there that all of us can learn from. So thank you for your attention in the video. Some other pieces that can support our mental well-being, aside from rest and those normal things we hear like sleep and food and moving our body, is our thinking, our thoughts and feelings. They really do create our inner world and therefore create the world that we live in and how we act in the world. I feel like this is really well illustrated by a concept out of cognitive behavioral therapy. For those of you who are really into therapy, I'm really into therapy. I love therapy. There's so many different types out there. There's psychotherapy, therapy, behavior therapy. There's also counseling. There's different ways that we can explore our bodies and our mind and how they work together, and those therapies can be really eye-opening. So cognitive behavioral therapy is one type of therapy that exists out there, and there's a model that they use. They call it the triangle of your feelings, thoughts, and behaviors. And the idea is that this, unlike the putting the order of care where we actually do need to start with ourselves, this one shows us that our thoughts, our behaviors, and feelings, you can really start anywhere and you'll start to see a change in any of the above. So for example, let's say we start with our thoughts. I'm going to use a thought that used to come to my mind on a regular basis, unfortunately. And that was that I used to tell myself that I was not very smart. I know, and how helpful is that? And you might be like, Megan, you just told me like all this education that you have. I don't consider myself a very good student or a scholar. I consider myself a very curious person who is okay at following directions in order to get the pieces of paper that are necessary. But I don't do it for the paper. I do it because I'm interested. But I really thought for so many years that I was not a smart person. And that would cause me to have behaviors like, oh, it doesn't matter if I don't get a good mark. So I wouldn't study. And then maybe I wouldn't get a good mark on an exam. And so my feelings would be, oh, gosh, yeah, I feel really down about that. And my thought is, see, you're not very smart. See how that kind of plays into one another? So let's pretend I caught that thought. Megan, are you really, really not smart? Or is this just an area you're not familiar with? Maybe it's new to you. Maybe it's challenging. That's okay. Is there something we might be able to do to see if we can get more curious or gain some more information about what we don't know? And my behavior might be, yeah, I could read a little bit more. Maybe I could watch a documentary. I could do some research. Maybe studying was the wrong word for me. Maybe I just didn't like the idea of studying, quote unquote. Now, let's say I got really interested in the topic that I was into, and I go in and do a test on it, and I do a lot better than I thought I'd do because I was interested. I gained some information. I start to feel like, hey, that was fun. I could do that again. I really liked that approach to being curious. And so I've changed my thought from I'm not smart to maybe I could be more curious about this topic and see what happens. And I've changed the entire outcome of that triangle. And this could be done for really anything. Like, I don't have enough time. Really, why don't we have enough time? Maybe we need to do a time audit to see where our time is going. Maybe it's not that our time is not enough. It's that we actually don't have enough energy for the amount of things we've signed up for, and we need to prioritize differently. Maybe that's it. Maybe it's that we actually need to put in some behaviors of rest to feel better about the work that we do. Maybe there's work we're doing that is not necessary. We just think we have to do it. So you're starting to see where our thoughts impact the behaviors and feelings that we have. This triangle is so important, especially as an entrepreneur, because if our thoughts are not supporting us, our thoughts are not supporting our business, because our business is who we are. Our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, how we show up really impacts what we do. So take a moment to reflect on some of the thoughts that you have on a regular basis. Are they supporting you? Are they your cheerleader? Can we be our best advocate just in noticing the thoughts that are not actually contributing to the work that we're doing? So you're welcome to pause and think about this, or we can roll into cognitive distortions or thought traps, thinking traps. They're also called. Um, thinking traps are, we call them cognitive distortions, but they're irrational thoughts that are based on our own bias and perception of the world. And most of the time, they're not true, because we're not necessarily taking into consideration how someone else feels, that maybe someone feels different than us. So, for example, black and white thinking, it's either this or that, there's nothing in between. If the world ran like that, it would look a whole lot different than it does today. There's a lot of gray space. And as I like to say, there's a whole rainbow that exists between black, the color black, and the color white, a whole rainbow of different things out there. So, with your thought traps, we talk a lot about those in a different training. So take a look at some of the outlines of the other Thrive Together series, and we go into those in a bit deeper manner. But what we do want to talk about here today is boundaries, because as an entrepreneur, your time, your energy are of the utmost importance, and we need boundaries. Boundaries are a way that we show people we care. We care enough to tell you, no, that does not work for me. Or we care enough to say, I'm going to show up the best if. That's how I like to think of a boundary. And there's different types of boundaries. We took this one from the pesi.com blog, and it's understanding 6 types of boundaries. There's also a woman named Carrie Cole who has a boundary boot camp, which I cannot recommend more. It's beautiful. It talks about how boundaries are kind, because being nice isn't always being kind. If we're being nice to people, please, and we're not being kind, we can cause more damage than if we were kind and did what we need to do. And sometimes most of the time, that requires boundary. So boundaries could be physical. So that means our body. How close do we want people to be to us? Do we only deliver our services virtually, or are they in person? Those are physical boundaries. Material boundaries. What about our possessions? What do we expect of others when they borrow something for us, or if they are sharing a logo that's ours? Time boundaries. We spoke a bit about this, but how you use your time or relate to others with that time. If you book a 30-minute meeting and someone takes, oh, can we go over 5 to 10 minutes? Are you actually being honest when you say yes? Or did you really mean no? We need to be really clear on these things. Otherwise, people will take of our resources, our time, and our energy. We have sexual boundaries in there, which is really important to explore in your personal life, which is part of our holistic well-being. Our emotional boundaries is more how we share how we're feeling. We don't need to express every depth of our soul to everyone, but we do need to know how we show up and what we feel comfortable sharing in different spaces. There's also our intellectual boundaries. So your thoughts, your opinions, your ideas. I even think here, these sessions that I'm giving you, these are my intellectual thoughts, things that I have pulled together and formulated to provide to you. What are the boundaries of that information that it's being provided? And just like you in your business, you have intellectual properties that you provide to others as well. What are your boundaries around those? So something to think about. I highly encourage that. Now, because we're always looking for practical ways to take care of ourselves, this could be one of my favorite hacks, life hacks, boosters, whatever you want to call it. I kept these questions on a sticky note on my computer for years, and now they are etched into my brain. When I'm feeling low, before I start talking to myself in a voice that isn't kind, before I start asking myself what's wrong, or trying to maybe even tell somebody else that they're wrong because I'm not feeling well, I ask myself these questions. So if I'm feeling low, I ask myself, how did I sleep last night? If the answer is well, okay, great, wonderful. If it's not well, I'm like, oh, okay, maybe I need to be a bit kinder to myself today. Am I thirsty? Sometimes my brain fog is thirst. I have not drank an ounce of water and I am so thirsty, or it's time to have some water. Do I need to move? Have I been sitting all day and it's just stagnant energy? Sometimes I just need to get up and go for a walk. Am I hungry? I've noticed that a lot of my anger is quite related to hunger these days, which is interesting. Do I need a friend? Am I just feeling a bit lonely because I'm isolated as an entrepreneur, or my work is all remote? And is it time to go outside? Can be tricky in the winter, but maybe there's some way we can get nature into our lives. I found by the time I've gone through all those questions, there's at least one thing, if not more, that will help me feel better. And sometimes I can do them all at the same time. If I didn't sleep well last night, I'm thirsty, I need to move a little bit. Maybe I'm a bit hungry, I'm lonely, and I want to go outside. Maybe I'll go for a walk outside with a friend, drink some water, and go get a snack. All because I didn't sleep well last night and I just need a little bit of an energy boost. Maybe it's one thing. I just encourage you to think about these questions. Maybe think about questions you'd add for yourself that can really stop you from going down a spiral that is not helpful in our cognitive behavioral therapy model of emotion triangle, right? See if we can stop the thought and do some behaviors that help us feel better. All right. So none of us were meant to do life alone. That was not how we were designed. And as an entrepreneur, sometimes we feel as though that is our job in life, is to be by ourselves. When we did this session live, people were thrilled to connect. We exchanged our LinkedIn profiles, we followed each other's websites, we exchanged information. Being part of a community is so important, especially as an entrepreneur. So reach out. Yes, employment and entrepreneurship is here for you. They have many programs and services that support what you do, but also are meant to connect you with people who understand, who can coach you through some of the hiccups or the hard parts of being an entrepreneur, and also connect you in with community to support what you're doing. So they encourage you, and I encourage you to keep in touch. We have an email here, info@yesmontreal.ca, and their website, www.yesmontreal.ca. And this is the part where I thank you for your participation. Thank you for being here today. It's honestly such an honor to know that there are people who are interested in how we care for our mental well-being, especially as entrepreneurs. Canada thrives on innovation, and Quebec is one of the most interesting, well, I would say is the most interesting province in Canada in a good way. There's so much that comes out of there. And I always appreciate knowing that there's beautiful Canadian ideas that are being brought to Canada and to the world. So thank you for what you do. And thank you to our sponsors, the CHSSN and the Public Health Agency of Canada, for making today's session possible. We definitely invite you to check out some of our other sessions where we look at things like the emotion wheel, the 7 types of rest that exist, internal family systems, and even the Ikigai, which is our purpose in life. So lots going on, and lots of opportunity for you to come back. But in the meantime, thank you so much. Take care, and please keep in touch.